Welcome to today's People to People. I'm Brett Vickery. At the time of this taping, the nation's government is still shut down. SNAP benefits are paused to millions of Americans, and premiums for millions more are set to rise for people across the country. Here to talk about how that's impacting our health care is our good friend, Dr. Jeffrey Sterling. Hello, doctor.
Well, hello. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. I feel like I love that I get to see you every time I fill in.
There you go.
It's great. Okay, increasing ACA premiums. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, the premiums were going to increase anyway. There was a projected increase of 26%. But one of the things that's especially concerning is that part of the reason, a really big part of the reason for the governmental shutdown is because subsidies were due to expire. And without those subsidies being renewed, the subsidies to support the costs, without that happening, prices are actually meant to increase over 100%. Actually, the number that's being thrown out is 114%. So families now, the most vulnerable of, who qualify for state Medicaid benefits, are now expected to see their benefits doubling. And that's literally what the fight related to the governmental shutdown is all about, on one side of the aisle, that is.
Is there a chance for them to go back down if they do indeed double, or is it one of those things that just stays up?
Well, that's a great question, because the cost of healthcare never goes down. The rate of rise just slows down or speeds up. So pricing is always going to do what it does. But one of the ways in which this works, one of the ways in which it could go down, or slow down at least, is the more people that enroll help.
Gotcha.
So in the state of Illinois, across the country, 4.8 million people are about to lose that benefit if those subsidies aren't renewed, including 100,000 in the state of Illinois, 60,000 of whom are here in Chicago.
Gotcha. A good thing to talk about is that obesity rates are down. Talk to me about how we know that.
How about that? Actually, over the last 3 years, when it hit a high, 70% of Americans are either overweight or obese. And obese is defined by a BMI of 30% or more. But over the last 3 years, that number has actually gone down nearly a full 3%, which is amazing. And so much of that is attributable to the increase in the GLP-1s, Ozempic, Wegovy, and things of that nature, semaglutides.
And as far as, obesity can be caused by a variety of different things, but a lot of it's with diet, and we're hearing that there's going to be different dietary restrictions possibly coming out.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that was a quick seg. So the point there is that every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services actually releases guidelines for dietary considerations. Things like include more fiber in your diet, things that we all know about, lower your cholesterol, et cetera, et cetera. Well, those are due to come out. And one of the things that the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is focusing on, there's actually 5 things, but some of them more controversial than others. He describes himself as a carnivore. So whereas the dietary guidelines historically have said decrease the amount of red meat that you're eating because it actually increases your unsaturated fats, your fats which actually lead to heart disease by clogging your arteries up, increasing your cholesterol. Well, actually, even in spite of the evidence that suggests that you should slow that down, he actually may be looking to walk back on that. Similarly, another of the guidelines, which kind of goes against the grain in terms of what research is showing, is alcohol consumption. We know that alcohol consumption includes, at any level, all different types of cancer, and now there's enough equivocation that is being forced into the interpretation of the research to say that, well, maybe moderate alcohol is going to be okay. So those dietary guidelines have been slowed down because of the governmental shutdown, but as soon as it reopens, those recommendations will come out and we'll see. One big thing that I can say that is a positive that I certainly can get 100% behind is that RFK Jr. seems to want to really confront the notion that we eat too many processed foods. Now, the problem with processed foods isn't the processing, but it's those ingredients that are in there. So all of these things together are things that we should pay attention to, and it's really important just so we as a nation can have a conversation about what healthy eating looks like, hopefully supported by the data.
And with this processed food, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but people might be eating the same Fruit Loops, but they're not made the same as they were maybe 30 years ago. Are they putting different stuff in it? And is that why, I mean, we love that obesity is going down, but still the food that we're eating, I feel like is so different than even when I ate when I was 5 years old,
Let me take a step back, because there's an important thing to note, even in the obesity conversation. The obesity rate has gone down by 3%, but the diabetes rate is still at an all-time high. So the net effects of decreasing your weight and being obese haven't caught up to the diseases that obesity creates yet. So that's important. So our habits still need to change, and we need to sustain that. The real concern with obesity is whether or not insurance companies are going to continue to support it. So right now, insurance companies are paying for the GLP-1s if you have the diagnosis of diabetes. But Americans have seen this and said, this is great for obesity too, let's get in there and do that. Now, in terms of the processed foods and all the rest of that, food has definitely been engineered. You know, it's a science. You figure out what stimulates our interest, whether it's the taste, the texture, you know, a content of sugars and all of the rest of that. So yes, we're being manipulated. And some of that really does need to be addressed, because it's not in our long-term health interest.
Yeah. All right, we talked about all of you. I want to talk about you, because
Me?
you have a book to talk about.
My ninth?
Yes.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. Congrats.
Well, thank you. It's just another way of trying to give people information to be better stewards of their own health care. But we try to do it in an entertaining way. So my first book actually was called Behind the Curtain, A Peek at Life from Within the Emergency Department. 8 books later, I'm actually revisiting it, actually 10 years later, with Behind the Curtain, A Peek at Holiday Life from Within the Emergency Department.
Oh, wow.
So we're just telling stories of fun things, sometimes fun things, I should say, that happen in emergency departments. And you kind of go from New Year's to Valentine's Day to 4th of July, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and tell stories. Now, the purpose of telling the stories actually are to give people lessons about how you leave emergency departments have a lot to do with how you enter them. So I'm still promoting health by giving people examples of the types of things that happen when disease hits and when you have to show up in an emergency department. It's a roller coaster ride of emotions. You'll cry a little bit, you'll laugh, you'll get creeped out. So it's a fun book, and it was very fun to write.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, you can find Dr. Sterling's new book and lots of resources at jeffreysterlingmd.com. Thank you, doctor.
Good seeing you again.
Good to see you, too.